The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Good morning. I'm John David Wells. Today's Friday. What do we do on this broadcast? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We de-propagandize the mainstream media. We make commentary. That's not news. Commentary is opinion, both yours and mine, and so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Time now to start our broadcast with the front page, a news digest of what happened since yesterday's broadcast and while we were asleep. The Israeli-Hamas war is again leading the news. Israel orders more Gaza evacuations. This being reported by USA Today. The Israeli military expanded its evacuation zones to include the second largest city in Gaza, Khan Yunis, in the southern Gaza Strip. Since October 13, thousands of Palestinians have fled the northern Gaza territory after Israeli forces warned them to evacuate. Long after the conflict is over, according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the military needs to maintain unrestricted security control over the Gaza Strip. More than 1,200 Israelis were killed, most of them civilians, and up to 240 hostages were taken after Hamas militants crossed the border and attacked Israeli communities on October 7th. A humanitarian crisis in southern Gaza is getting worse as a result of Israel's expanding airstrikes and ground offensives in response to the attack, as thousands of Palestinians have fled from the north. The United Nations Human Rights Commissioner has called on the international community to act with one voice and press for an immediate ceasefire. Palestinians in Gaza are living in utter deepening horror, said the UN's Volker Turk at a news conference in Geneva. Quote, "As an immediate step, I call for urgent cessation of hostilities and the release of all hostages." The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, is calling on Israel to do more to protect civilian life, this being reported by USA Today. When Vice President Kamala Harris called on Israel to stop killing so many Palestinian civilians last weekend, she stopped short of saying that the country has committed war crimes in its scorched earth campaign to destroy Hamas. She said, quote, "The United States is unequivocal. International humanitarian law must be respected," unquote. She said during a speech in Dubai last weekend, "Too many innocent Palestinians have been killed," she went on to say. The vice president isn't the first Biden administration official to criticize Israel's conduct in Gaza, but the question of whether Israel is violating the international laws of war and armed conflict is a delicate and hotly debated topic in Washington. Israel is abiding by globally recognized rules of armed conflict. Quote, "From the way the goals of the war were crafted and all the way to our operational conduct," Iral Hulata, Israel's national security advisor, said to USA Today, quote, "There are teams whose sole responsibility is to verify every strike and every action to see that it does not contradict international law," unquote. Israel insists that it's well aware of the laws of war and armed conflict and that it has made all reasonable efforts to comply, an assessment shared by many legal experts, including former State Department lawyer Orde Kriti. The American embassy in Baghdad has been hit by rockets, this according to Fox News. The U.S. Embassy in Baghdad was attacked by several rockets this morning that caused minor material damage, but no casualties, according to U.S. and Iraqi officials. Explosions were heard near the embassy in the capital city of Iraq at approximately 4:15 a.m. on Friday. An embassy spokesman then confirmed that the U.S. Embassy was attacked by 2 salvos of rockets, adding that, quote, "Assessments are ongoing, but there are no reported casualties on the embassy compound," unquote. Friday's attack, this morning's attack, included 14 Katyusha rockets, some of which struck near one of the embassy's gates, while others fell in the river, according to an Iraqi security official. The attack was confirmed by a U.S. military official who said the multi-rocket attack was launched at U.S. and coalition forces in Baghdad's heavily fortified Green Zone, which houses Iraqi government buildings and embassies. In the United States, the UNLV shooting still there. Police in Las Vegas have identified the suspect in Wednesday's shooting at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, that left 3 people dead and another injured. Sheriff Kevin McMahill identified the suspect yesterday during a press conference as Anthony James Polito. He's 67 years old. He was. McMahill said that Polito was a resident of nearby Henderson, Nevada, and applied numerous times for jobs with several higher education institutions in Nevada and was denied each time. Polito was killed by police during a shootout on Wednesday. The sheriff said Polito had a list of people he was seeking on campus, including faculty from East Carolina, where he was previously a professor. Hunter Biden has been indicted by David Weiss, U.S. attorney in California. This from USA Today. Hunter Biden, the president's son, was indicted on charges he failed to pay his income taxes, Justice Department Special Counsel David Weiss announced yesterday. The announcement came months after a plea deal over tax and gun charges collapsed. Under the agreement, which a federal judge rejected, Hunter Biden was set to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of failing to pay taxes in 2017 and 2018. Biden is charged in a California federal court with 3 felony tax offenses and 6 misdemeanors. He engaged in a scheme in which he failed to pay at least $1.4 million in self-assessed taxes from 2016 through 2019. And also evaded tax assessment for 2018 when he filed false returns, this according to the indictment. From 2016 to 2020, Biden spent money on, quote, drugs, escorts, and girlfriends, luxury hotels and rental properties, exotic cars, clothing, and other items of a personal nature. In short, everything but his taxes, unquote. This again, according to the indictment. Lawyers for Hunter Biden did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The indictments have been called a nuclear bomb for the Biden family. This from Fox News. After that California grand jury handed down an indictment of first son Hunter Biden, political analysts predicted the bombshell would put President Biden in a self-constructed trap after he again claimed allegations he was influence peddling cahoots with his brother and son were lies. A grand jury impaneled in the Central District of California, which comprises Los Angeles, handed down an indictment against Hunter Biden. Quote, I think a lot of people felt that David Weiss was going to let these charges skate and Hunter Biden would never be held accountable for making millions of dollars overseas. And a lot of people will say that was inappropriate, unquote. This according to former Representative Sean Duffy, the Republican from Wisconsin. Washington Times opinion editor Charles Hurt added to Fox News, the indictment must be like, quote, a nuclear bomb going off for the Biden family, unquote, saying it must terrify President Biden as he approaches his re-election contest to have his son indicted for something he may or may not be connected to. Donald Trump is appealing a federal judge's ruling on presidential immunity. This from USA Today. Donald Trump is appealing a federal judge's ruling. He is not protected by presidential immunity from criminal charges tied to his alleged interference in the 2020 election. The former president filed the appeal yesterday, along with requests for a pause in his criminal proceedings while the appeals court considers his arguments. Prosecutors oppose the pause request, said Trump. His trial in the case is currently scheduled to begin in March. Trump is fighting charges brought by special counsel Jack Smith that could land him in prison for decades, including that he conspired to obstruct the process for certifying the election. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan rejected a series of arguments from Trump to have the case dismissed, such as that he cannot be prosecuted because his alleged actions were, quote, at the heart of his official responsibilities as president, unquote. The judge went on to say, defendant's 4-year service as commander-in-chief did not bestow on him the divine right of kings to evade the criminal accountability that governs his fellow citizens, said Judge Chutkan in her December 1st ruling. Trump argued that the alleged statements about the administration of the federal election unquestionably fell within the scope of his official duties because presidents are duty-bound to defend themselves publicly and promote policy initiatives. The media is in the news. News organizations have decided to sponsor more Republican primary debates. This from USA Today. Multiple news organizations said yesterday they will sponsor a series of Republican debates next month in Iowa and New Hampshire ahead of the state's crucial primary contests. CNN said it will host debates next month in both Iowa and New Hampshire, the first events of their kind not sponsored by the Republican National Committee. The Iowa debate is being organized for Wednesday, January 10th, 5 days before the caucuses that open the delegate selection process, the outlet said in an announcement. In addition, ABC News and WMUR-TV of Manchester, New Hampshire announced they would sponsor a debate on January 18th. CNN's New Hampshire debate is planned for Sunday, January 25th, make that 21st, 2 days before the primary in the Granite State. The events will provide Republican voters an opportunity to hear the governing philosophies of the leading candidates seeking to challenge the likely Democrat presidential nominee, President Joe Biden, in November, according to a CNN statement. According to the Academy, UPenn president's testimony has cost the University of Pennsylvania, $100 million in a donation. This from Fox Business. A major donor to the University of Pennsylvania is withdrawing a donation worth roughly $100 million as a protest against the college's handling of anti-Semitism on campus and the controversial testimony by UPenn's president on the subject. Ross Stevens, the founder and CEO of Stone Ridge Asset Management, donated to Penn in 2017, a gift that consisted of partnership units in the firm, which are now valued at around $100 million to help the university establish a financial innovation center. Attorneys for Stevens sent the university a letter indicating the school violated Stone Ridge's limited partnership agreement through its failure to adhere to anti-discrimination and anti-harassment rules. This news was first reported by Axios. The letter said that Stevens and Stone Ridge are appalled at the university's stance on anti-Semitism on campus. It added that Penn's permissive approach to hate speech, calling for violence against Jews, and laissez-faire attitude toward harassment and discrimination against Jewish students would violate any policy of rules that prohibit harassment and discrimination based on religion, including those of Stone Ridge. Good news on the economy this morning. The U.S. job growth has continued to be robust. This from the New York Times. The economy continued to generate robust growth in November, suggesting there is still juice left in the labor market that has been slowing almost imperceptibly since last year's pandemic rebound. Employers added 199,000 jobs last month, according to the Labor Department, while the unemployment rate dropped to 3.7%. The increase in employment includes approximately 41,000 auto workers and actors who returned to their jobs after strikes and others in related businesses that had been stalled by those walkouts. The decline in the unemployment rate is particularly notable because it had been drifting upward. That was a source of concern for many economists because historically, even small increases in the jobless rate have been associated with upcoming recessions. And that is today's front page. And so, welcome once again to the Wells Report. Thank you for being a part of this broadcast. It is Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend plan. I do, although some of it might be a little bit somber. I'll talk about that a little bit more later on in this broadcast. In the meantime, coming up in just a couple of moments, we're going to spend some time talking a little bit more about the Israeli-Hamas situation as Israel continues its offensive against Hamas, now in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. And the world community actually doing something that I find okay. They did something to change their language. I don't know whether you caught it in the front page, but I'll expand on that coming up in just a little bit. Also, this indictment against Hunter Biden. This one looks like it has teeth. This one looks like it might indeed be the snowball that starts the avalanche toward the Biden family. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. If you have comments, if you have interest in what we're discussing, if you have an opinion, please do share it. 817-379-2172. You can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, X, Twitch, Rumble, and Patreon. And we'll have a Substack column up a little bit later on today. The Wells Report continues next. Stay right where you are.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
This is the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Want to say good morning to Yvonne Field, joining us first thing on Friday morning. Good morning, Yvonne. Good to have you here. As always, you are such a great friend of this broadcast. California is facing a major budget crisis because of a severe revenue decline and a record $68 billion budget deficit that will likely force Democrats running the state to cut spending as the mass exodus of people from California continues. According to California's Nonpartisan Legislative Analyst's Office, that report was released yesterday. The state's budget deficit has grown exponentially in just a few months' time, that up more than $54 billion from just $14.3 billion in June. The deficit is not the largest to ever face the state as a percentage of overall spending, but it is the largest in terms of real dollars. The LAO's report made no mention of the billions in tax revenue lost by California due to the exodus of people and businesses, but said the massive deficit increase and lower revenues were largely driven by a change to the state's tax filing deadline and poorer than expected economic conditions. Those poor economic conditions are indeed people and businesses leaving California. People are finished with a state that is largely socialist and run that way unapologetically by the government in Sacramento. I have looked at this every possible way I can and cannot see why it is that 3 cities in California will overwhelm what is largely fiscal responsibility and just plain old-fashioned good sense on the part of the rest of the state. California is ruled by 3 cities and the policies there, all of them covered in homeless people, garbage, and feces. Why in heaven's name would anybody put up with that? Well, businesses and people are not. Up to 700,000 people have left California since the current policymakers gained power. 700,000 people. That's half the population, roughly half the population of Wyoming. And where are these people going? Someplace else. Businesses are saying the same thing. By the way, according to this Fox News article, according to IRS data reported by CNBC in May, California lost $29 billion in tax revenue in 2021. This after suffering a loss of $18 billion in 2020. As a remedy to the ballooning deficit, the LAO suggested the state dip into its $24 billion in cash reserves, as well as reducing spending on schools and community colleges. It also pointed to one-time spending cuts and shifting costs without impacting core services. It added the California Assembly should exercise caution if it decides to take such measures, noted the cash reserves would likely be insufficient to cover what it said were California's multi-year $30 billion average government deficits. It went on to suggest a long-term fix would be either to increase revenue, cut more spending, or both. That's going to be very difficult for California to increase its revenue based on the fact that taxes are already as high as in most states, if not every state in the United States. California is simply not the place it used to be when it was an economic powerhouse. There was a time when California was the 8th largest economic power in the world, and it is very slowly sinking through these political ideas that do not work. They simply do not work. Hypocrisy, the willingness for leaders to say one thing and do another, all of these things create instability. Businesses see it first, they leave, taking their employees with them. The people in California absolutely finished with paying this state money that is never sufficient. Like many large governments, including the federal government of the United States, no amount of tax revenue is enough to satisfy the wants and needs of politicians running those particular governments. Therefore, why would you do that? It is wasted money. Indeed, it is. In California has a major problem. I don't know how they're going to solve it if they ever can. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for being with us this morning as we give you the news, comment, analysis, and debate. Back with more in just a moment.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to Low Cost Airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. There has been some news which I consider positive. It's just one statement from the United Nations coming out of the Israeli-Hamas war. And that particular circumstance is a change of some kind that I want to share with you. And it comes to us from USA Today. The Israeli military has expanded its evacuation zones to include the second largest city in Gaza, that is Khan Yunis, in the southern Gaza Strip. Since October 13th, thousands of Palestinians have fled the northern Gaza territory after Israeli forces warned them to evacuate. Hopefully they will take that evacuation warning, this for the southern part of the Gaza Strip. as soon as humanly possible. Long after the conflict is over, according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the military needs to maintain unrestricted security control over the Gaza Strip. That is understandable insofar as when Israel stands back from that security necessity, there are terror plots that are plotted and executed against the state of Israel. More than 1,200 Israelis were killed October 7th, most of them civilians. 240 hostages were taken. I mean, a humanitarian crisis in southern Gaza is getting worse as the result of Israel's expanding airstrikes and ground offensive in response to the attack as thousands of Palestinians fled from the north. This is biased. This is biased reporting. What this particular paragraph does is say that Israel and their expanding airstrikes and ground offensive are responsible for this humanitarian crisis. That is not true. The simple case of the matter is the humanitarian crisis being felt by the Palestinian people was inflicted on them by Hamas and Hamas only. The response against Hamas by the Israeli military is just and understandable, and indeed needs to be considered above these ideas that the world would be going out and saying that this is a cause, and the media would say that this is a cause of Israeli airstrikes. It's not the case. The simple case of the matter is that Hamas decided to attack Israel. Israel is attacking back, as they should. Hamas attacked without national writ, without soldiers in uniform, without any of these things. It was indeed a surprise vandal attack on a nation state. Nation states will defend themselves. They need to. If they do not defend themselves, they are not a nation state. The Palestinians have rejected a homeland of their own 4 separate times, and it's time for them to realize that their choice for a homeland, for anything that they can do, is indeed either choose where they live and how they live now, or choose a Palestinian future as a contributor to the world, as opposed to a detractor or even terrorist organization against the world. It's completely up to them. But to say that Israeli airstrikes were the main cause of all this humanitarian crisis in Palestine, no, absolutely not. That is just biased reporting. The United Nations Human Rights Commissioner called on the international community to act with one voice and press for an immediate ceasefire. And this is the positivity that I'm bringing up in this. Palestinians in Gaza are living in utter deepening horror, said the UN's Volker Turk at a news conference in Geneva. And then he said this: as an immediate step, I call for an urgent cessation of hostilities and the release of all hostages. That's actually a change. That's actually a change, although I believe that Volker Turk got this out of order. Here is what needs to happen. All the hostages, every single one of them, must be released. Every single one. And then a cessation of hostilities should occur. As a matter of fact, I'm quite sure that indeed a cessation of hostilities would occur, except for the hostilities required to chase down Hamas leadership, to chase down Hamas military, if they don't have a military, but these Hamas attackers. And what they should do is they should continue that until it's over. Hamas must cease to exist if the Palestinians are going to have a future. If Hamas indeed disappears, and if indeed Hamas is gone from the Palestinian paradigm, then what will happen is the Palestinian future, the Palestinians will have a future that they can start on that day. But it starts first with Hamas saying, okay, we've lost this war. It's time for us to get these hostages back to their homes and to face the absolute justified charges against them in the world court for war crimes, which are abundant. Simply abundant. And this gets me to something that is my basic practical ideology. I believe in just that. Practical understanding of whatever particular subject, especially those involving governments and states and use of military force. I believe in getting to the basics. The basics are as follows. Hamas attacked Israel. Israel attacked back. That is a just move. What happens to the Palestinians? Based on the fact that they indeed elected Hamas and kept them in power for the last 16 years. Their government malfunctioned. It is their own responsibility that they face these so-called humanitarian catastrophes. The other thing that I need to understand, that I would like you to understand, is this. I didn't realize just how deep anti-Jewish bigotry was in the United States and around the world until this conflict. But we have to decide, the people of the rest of the world, and certainly the United States, which of these organizations is more beneficial to the world? Is Israel more beneficial to the world? The Jews who live in Israel? Is that a nation that is more beneficial? Or are the Palestinians more beneficial to the world? They have been either the subject of, the inspiration for, or actual practitioners of much of the world's terrorism for the last 60 years. Enough is enough. The Palestinians have nothing to offer the rest of the world except anger, hatred, bigotry, and messy, surprise death through the acts of terrorism that they are responsible for. It's that practicality that is required, in my view. It's quite simply something that must be considered. If the Palestinians want to indeed have a future, they have got to choose a future of a homeland where they must abide by international rules of civilization. They simply don't do that now. Their entire populace has been brainwashed by Hamas to believe that the author of all of their difficulties are the Jews. The Jews are not the author of their difficulties. The Jews paid for Israel, the property that they currently exist on, through the blood of 6 million of their family members. They do have a right to a homeland of their own, one that they can both live in, flourish in, and protect. There were people living in the space that is now Israel before. Sure, I understand. But you're not going to win the argument by going out and committing chainsaw acts of brutal violence, mayhem, rape, and murder in order to get people to agree and live with you. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to do it the right way. You're going to have to provide something better than the state of Israel offers. And the Palestinians have nothing to offer but horrible violence, usually against people that can't fight back. That's the way I see it. Now, many people have said, John David, you're a Zionist. Well, if being a Zionist means that I believe that the Jews should have a country of their own, I am absolutely a Zionist. I do believe in the state of Israel. I believe that it is essential, not just to the Jews, but indeed to the rest of the world. The sin, the murder, the destruction of the Jewish people that has existed for thousands of years has run its course. It is time to stop. And that is exactly the conclusion that was made by many Arab states. The reason that we are in this war is because, not necessarily us, but the reason that Israel and Hamas are in this war is because Israel, through dint of hard diplomatic work over decades, finally convinced Arab countries to normalize relations. This, of course, would end the money train that goes to the Palestinians, more appropriately and more accurately, not the Palestinians, because they live in abjectly poor conditions based on the fact that their government is using all the resources coming to it from countries all over the world, independent donors, etc., to create the horrific army of destruction based on absolute Jewish bigotry. But Palestine has a different future if they choose to embrace it. There are two Palestinian territories, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. While I believe that having those two separate, while I believe that that is a mistake, I also believe that if Palestinians are going to have a future, they're going to have resources. One of those resources are the beaches on the Gaza Strip. If they, say, for example, add territory to the West Bank, and then if Israel overtakes and continues to essentially just annex the Gaza Strip, then that's going to continue the argument. What I would suggest is that Palestinians realize their future lies in good faith and good action, as opposed to terrorist action and death. And if they would simply accept a two-state solution, then they would have all of that. But then again, what do you do about this horrific anti-Jewish bigotry? What do you do about that? Is it going to go away? No. We have seen in not necessarily all of our lifetimes, although there have been some people that lived through the Second World War, but certainly since the Second World War, we have been treated to this nonstop anger and Jewish bigotry that has been not just acted on throughout the decades, but now trained in the schools of Palestine. We have seen that since World War II, it is essential for these kinds of states, Germany, Japan, the protagonists or the antagonists in the Second World War, to deal with an occupation that lasts 2 generations. As I said, you can't do anything about the bigotry currently in place in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank among Palestinians. You can't do anything about that. But what you can do is you can insist that the children be educated away from being suicide bombers, and that Jews will walk up behind you and shoot you in the head. You have to deprogram that level of amazing bigotry. And that takes a while. The children that would be educated, say, for example, if this happened, if there was a two-state solution, and indeed Israel had a serious impact on the new Palestinian society, those children would learn, and there would be a few minds changed. Their children, on the other hand, would be raised in what would be a more peaceful, more prosperous society. They would see for themselves that working with the world, as opposed to essentially being nothing more than an object of hate, bigotry, and murder, is a much better life. That is what I believe should be happening here, and it is going to take a while. And when, say, for example, the world's media refers to the West Bank as the occupied West Bank, all that degrades the work that has to be done. It's going to take 2 generations. Generations are 30 years. It's going to take 60 years to deprogram the hatred of Palestinians against Israel. And if indeed the Palestinians, and this is a bit of hypocrisy here on the Palestinians, if indeed that this is all about the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, then any argument that goes past or goes before 1948 is moot. It's time for Hamas to realize they've lost the war, release all their hostages. Israel will cease hostilities except for finding those responsible. It's time for the World Court to reconvene the Nuremberg war crimes trials and take these people and give them what they deserve, whatever that is, after they are found guilty in a just world court. It's time to move past all this. And then it's time for Israel and the rest of the Arab world to get back to living a normal life for the future of all of us.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Good morning. This is the Wells Report. John David Wells at your service. Thank you very much for joining us. Ingrid Jacques is a opinion columnist for USA Today. And she has come up with a piece that you need to read. Go to usatoday.com, do a search for Ingrid Jacques, Jacqueus. Here's what she's written. Appalling. That's the only word that describes the response by progressive women and women's rights groups to the clear evidence of what Hamas terrorists did to women and girls in their brutal attack on Israel October 7th. When they started in force a few years ago, the Women's March and the hashtag #MeToo movement centered on the idea that we must, quote, believe women, unquote, when they say what has happened to them. No proof or even due process was needed. Many people's lives were destroyed by the hashtag #MeToo movement. Whether that destruction was justified or not remains to be debated among the people of the United States. However, it is obvious that hashtag #MeToo and those other women's groups came with a huge asterisk. These groups support only the women they deem worthy. This according to Ingrid Jacques. Well, there's an easier way to say that. The asterisk can also say, it's obvious the hashtag came with a huge asterisk. That would be asterisk unless you are a Jewish woman. In which case, none of the rules that we impose on certainly the United States and even the rest of the world have anything to do with any kind of reality as far as these women's groups are concerned. In the face of the reports of mass rape, mutilation, and murder of Israeli women, and plenty of corroborating proof and eyewitness testimony, the corroborating proof videos of triumphant Hamas terrorists in their destruction of these women of Israel. I mean, they shot the video themselves. I mean, this isn't a question. And yes, corroborating proof and eyewitness testimony. The reaction from too many women's rights organizations, professors, journalists, congresswomen, citizens has been either to ignore the fact that it happened, cast doubt on the fact that it happened, or equivocate by comparing the horrors these Israeli women experience with Palestinian suffering because of Israel's justified retaliation on the terrorists who perpetrated these acts. Ingrid Jacques goes on to say, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said last week, quote, I say to women's rights organizations, to the human rights organizations, you've heard of the rape of Israeli women, horrible atrocities, sexual mutilation. Where the hell are you? Ms. Jacques says, that's a good question. It absolutely is. UN Women, the United Nations entity that purportedly fights for women empowerment against sexual violence, took nearly 2 months to recognize gender-based atrocities by Hamas. UN Women also bungled a weak attempt to call out the terrorist group late last month when it posted something on social media, then promptly deleted it. UN Women had plenty to say about women's rights and girls in Gaza, but no condemnation of the acts that started the conflict. That finally changed this month after a week-long pressure campaign from grassroots groups like Me Too Unless You're a Jew, and others like former Meta executive Sheryl Sandberg, who has called out the silence of UN Women and other groups. It's shocking it took this level of shaming for women's rights organizations to call out Hamas. Absolutely true. Sandberg helped organize a presentation at the UN headquarters on Monday in which evidence of widespread sexual violence was presented through wrenching firsthand testimony from witnesses. Silence is complicity, said Ms. Sandberg. UN actions are egregious, but lackluster response is far from isolated. For instance, Brianna Joy Gray, a progressive podcaster, press secretary for Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential run, had the audacity to write this to her large following on X. Quote, believe all women was always an absurd overreach. Women should be heard, claims should be investigated, but evidence is required. The same is true of the allegations out of Israel. But also, this isn't a believe women scenario, because no female victims have offered testimony. Really. That's a quote. And all I can say on that is this. Many female victims of these atrocities will not testify because they are dead. Gray wrote this on the evening of the same day that Sandberg's event took place at the UN. Perhaps Gray overlooked the fact that firsthand testimony isn't possible in several cases because Hamas terrorists slaughtered their rape victims. Okay, I jumped ahead. There are numerous accounts of college students or college groups speaking in support of Hamas at their actions on October 7th. A law professor, also a woman, posed that Israel was playing up reports of rape to justify actions in Gaza. It's outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. And then there was the recent spectacle of the Oakland City Council meeting in California. One council member dared to suggest, calling for the condemnation of Hamas's acts. All hell broke loose. Several women who were members of the community spoke at the meeting in defense of Hamas and its tactics, also while denying the rape and horror the terrorists perpetrated. And then there's Pramila Jayapal, who said that we should look at the actions of both sides. When it comes to the rape, torture, mutilation, and murder of women, there are not two sides. There's only one side. And the women's movements, the human rights movements around the world, have forgotten all that. Why? Because they're all anti-Jewish bigots. That's why. This is the Wells Report. That is the end of hour number 1. Stick around. Hour number 2 is coming up. Stay where you are. This is the Wells Report.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
Hey, thanks for joining us this morning for the Wells Report, and make sure you share us with all your friends on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, Patreon, and don't forget to check out our Substack column, which will be coming up a little bit later on this afternoon. When you do all this, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us those thumbs up. They are really important. Check the notification box so you know when we're on the air, and whatever you do, join us every morning, Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 a.m. Central Time, for the Wells Report.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Good morning, I'm John David Wells. Here, we report the news, honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That is not news. Commentary is opinion, yours and mine, and so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us today. One of the things that we need to do in these United States is hold those who malfunction around us accountable for their actions. That is something that leads to the society that we live in currently. Although it has to be said that this society has suffered insofar as accountability seems to have dropped out of the intellectual paradigm in our nation at this particular moment, all based on politics, which is typical when it comes to an election year, especially an election year this important. The importance of this election year has to do with the fact that those people responsible for recent policy are in a position where they are very likely going to lose the opportunity to impose that policy. And they are panicking. And they are doing just exactly what they always do when they're about to lose power. And I'm talking about the American left, not necessarily the Democrat Party, but the Democrat Party is being led around by the nose by what are called progressives. They are leftists. They are unwilling to admit that the greatest nation on the face of the earth gives them the opportunity to say these things and do these things. And especially when you have the lack of accountability that we currently suffer in this nation, it is something that continues. It's ridiculous, and it will not stand. That being said, it stands now. And so there are an awful lot of people making an awful lot of very stupid statements and doing an awful lot of very stupid things. And these center on what we discussed last hour, the Israel-Hamas situation. Many of these people are inhabiting the great universities and colleges of this nation. In fact, not only are they spewing their ideology, they are imposing it in the guise of teaching, which is not anything close to what a university is supposed to be. Certainly, these debates should happen in college universities right up to the point where it calls for the dissolution of a Jewish state and the murder and genocide of the people living there. It's not difficult. And accountability is what is required to stop it. Both accountability for the students who suddenly realize that from the river to the sea, and this was reported earlier today, the river to the sea is a statement that calls for the eradication of Israel. Many of the people that are shouting it don't realize that. As a matter of fact, not only do they not realize that it calls for the dissolution of the state of Israel, they can't name the river or the sea. The river is the River Jordan. The sea is the Mediterranean. In between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean is Israel. It was fascinating in that many of these students, so bravely wearing their Palestinian garb and waving Palestinian flags, didn't realize that, and indeed changed their minds when they were informed of it. Why were they not informed? On the college campus, they spend tens of thousands of dollars a year to be a part of, or more. How come they weren't told that there? Well, because it's not about education. It's about indoctrination. So, accountability. Well, it doesn't come in the, shall we say, successful argument of those of us who believe a lot of the things that I just said. Effective accountability comes in the form of, sadly, currency. And the University of Pennsylvania, based on their president totally muffing a very easy question about Hamas terrorism and the anti-Jewish bigotry so prevalent on the UPenn campus and others. Well, that accountability is coming in the form of money, especially to UPenn. And it's about time. This from Fox Business News: a major donor to the University of Pennsylvania withdrew its donation worth roughly $100 million as a protest against the college handling of anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish bigotry on campus, and the controversial testimony by UPenn's president on the subject. Ross Stevens, the founder and CEO of Stone Ridge Asset Management, donated to the University of Pennsylvania in 2017 a gift that constituted a partnership in the firm, which is now valued at somewhere around $100 million to help the university establish a financial innovation center. Attorneys for Stevens sent the university a letter indicating the school violated Stone Ridge's limited partnership agreement through its failure to adhere to anti-discrimination and anti-harassment rules. The news was first reported by Axios. The letter said that Stevens and Stone Ridge, quote, are appalled by the university's stance on anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish bigotry on campus. It added Penn's permissive approach to hate speech, calling for violence against Jews, and their laissez-faire attitude toward harassment and discrimination against Jewish students would violate any policy of rules that prohibit harassment and discrimination based on religion, including those of Stone Ridge, unquote. It also took issue with President Liz Magill's testimony before the House Education and Workforce Committee last week, in which she said that whether anti-Semitic chants and calls for genocide of Jewish people or prohibited speech on campus are contextually dependent. Are you kidding? No, she wasn't. And also, she was also discussing whether those particular activities would violate Penn's rules against bullying and harassment if it was directed, pervasive, and severe. All of those things are suffered by Jewish students in major universities around the nation. This is not the only time that money has been used or will be used to change these policies on these universities. Many universities are now fighting lawsuits from students against their university. These are Jewish students that have actually decided to do something about this ridiculous anti-Jewish bigotry on their campuses. They're going to win those lawsuits, and they should. But there's a philosophical thing that says, does it really take money to be able to change these policies? There are two schools of thought. Philosophically, it's important, and that money would be the cause of all of this, when good sense and the turning away from primitive idiocy is so obvious. However, in a capitalist society, the object is to succeed financially. And yes, money is a measure of that success. And also, it's very effective. It's going to hurt the University of Pennsylvania for this withdrawal of $100 million. Now, I suspect that as soon as Dr. Magill or President Liz Magill withdraws as president of UPenn, along with other presidents, MIT, Harvard, as soon as they withdraw, the money train will be reactivated. But it shouldn't be, not in my view. What should indeed happen is that this should stay in place until those virulent cries of Jewish genocide are eradicated from those campuses, along with the professors who advocate them. It is time for accountability, and that accountability is long overdue. It should not have gotten this far, but it did. And now's the time to fix it. Stone Ridge went on to say that, quote, President McGill's December 6th, 2023 post on X admitted as much. Well, actually, that's the apology. She belatedly acknowledged only after congressional testimony went viral and demands for her termination amplified that calls for genocide of the Jewish people constitute harassment and discrimination. Duh. Man, these people are running these universities. They're running these universities right into the ground. In response to the backlash, McGill posted a video on Wednesday in which she said her testimony during the hearing was focused on university policies and the constitutional protections of free speech. That doesn't look like protection to me. That looks like a convenient hiding place. She wanted to be clear that a call for genocide of Jewish people is threatening, deeply so. View it would be harassment and intimidation, and that Penn's campus policies should be clarified and evaluated, and as president, she's committed to safe, secure, and a supportive environment so that all members of the University of Penn community can thrive. We can, and we will get this right. However, something tells me that she's not going to be one of the agents to get it right. She's going to be one of the agents watching on the sideline as somebody else gets it right. This is a career ender. It's sad. It's sad that it would be. But when you sit there and try to rationalize away anti-Jewish bigotry or bigotry of any kind on a university campus, you have made your bed, and it is time to lay in it. The letter to Penn indicated that he and Stone Ridge would be willing to reconsider the withdrawal of the donation only after the university has replaced McGill in the role of president. And yes, as I alluded to just a moment ago, that does make sense, except that all this is going to do is remove one person. What about the professors? What about the programmed students that don't know what they're talking about? What's going to happen there? No, I believe that the University of Pennsylvania should suffer for a long time the withdrawal of $100 million from Stone Ridge. I believe that other universities currently dealing with lawsuits from Jewish students against those universities should pay dearly. And what should happen is that these funds should not be restored. These universities should suffer. Is it because I'm a pro-Jewish Zionist? No. It's because I want the American Academy to realize that it's time for education, not leftist indoctrination. Leftist indoctrination has led to all manner of difficulties in this nation, from DEI. That's that idea that what you do is you essentially cut loose any kind of financial support, either in business or an outright donation, to Israel for the sake of damaging that state. And CRT, critical race theory, which is nothing more than a delusional rant on the part of an activist professor from years and years ago. When you start thinking about the things that have happened in this nation from the college campuses, then you start looking at the damage that those college campuses have wrought against this nation. And yes, I said against this nation. It's time for that to stop. And accountability is the key. Let's hope that indeed these universities suffer. Not just the presidents. That's easy. No, this should be a pain that lasts a while, as an encouragement to the others to not pursue this course.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to Low Cost Airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
This is the Wells Report, in progress for Friday, December 8th, year of our Lord 2023. Police in Las Vegas have identified the suspect in last Wednesday's shooting at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, that left 3 people dead and another badly injured. We have the latest, this from a news conference from yesterday, from the sheriff of Las Vegas Metropolitan Police.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin McMahill. I'm the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'm here to provide you additional details on the active shooter incident that occurred on Wednesday, December 6th, 2023, at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. The event was initiated as a shooting call at 11:45 a.m. The incident occurred in the 4500 block of South Maryland Parkway within the UNLV campus at Beam Hall. You can see the map to my left. Our suspect is identified as 67-year-old Anthony James Polito, P-O-L-I-T-O. He lived in Henderson, Nevada. He had a previous criminal history of computer trespass out of Virginia in 1992. You can see his photo to my left. Polito was armed with a Taurus 9mm handgun. He had brought 11 magazines to the scene with him. 9 loaded magazines were found on his person after the shooting, and you can see in the photo to the left, one of the magazine carriers that was fixed to his body. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. The gun was purchased legally in 2022, and at this point in the investigation, we do not know how many rounds he has fired. The names of the involved University of Nevada, Las Vegas officers will be released by their agency within the next 48 hours. I'm told that that will occur tomorrow. The deceased victims are identified as follows. The first victim, Patricia Navarro Velez, lived in Las Vegas and was a 39-year-old female. Navarro Velez was the assistant professor in accounting who worked in the Beam building on the 4th floor. Che Jung, or Jerry Chang, was a 64-year-old male. He lived in Henderson, and he was a professor of business who worked in the Beam building on the 3rd floor. The third victim in this case, we will not be identifying because the Clark County Coroner's Office has not yet been able to notify the next of kin. And so out of respect for the family, we will wait to identify the third victim until the family is notified. The fourth victim is a shooting victim who's a 38-year-old male. He is currently at Sunrise Hospital, and his condition has been downgraded to, again, a life-threatening position. He was a visiting professor. At this time, it is unknown how long it took for the suspect to find the first victim in the building. All of the deceased victims were located inside of the building and are all faculty members at the university.
All faculty members at the university. So this gentleman was not necessarily interested in students. He was interested in the faculty. CNN reports that Anthony Polito, the gunman authorities said killed 3 people Wednesday at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, visited a post office in Henderson and mailed 22 letters to various university personnel across the country with no return address. This according to Las Vegas Sheriff Kevin McMahill. Investigators are working with the postal inspector and federal partners to process the letters. McMahill said at a news conference that you just saw part of yesterday that they were working together with those who received those letters to find out what they said. At least some of the envelopes had white powder in them, but the substance was found to be harmless, according to Las Vegas police. Further details about the letter's contents were not immediately released. Detectives are continuing to process the envelopes and are asking anyone in the education world who receives a letter with no return address to proceed with caution. The gunman died in a confrontation with police, was a 67-year-old career college professor whose online profile paints a picture of a man fascinated by Vegas, puzzles, and conspiracy theories. And so, a former college professor is the author of Death and Mayhem at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. We'll have more coming up in just a couple of moments. This is the Wells Report.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 865. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
This is the Wells Report. Good morning. I'm John David Wells. A lot of people are discussing. I'm talking about news organizations discussing the Hunter Biden story, which is that he has been indicted once again by the prosecutor in that case, the federal prosecutor in the case, a guy named David Weiss, and they're saying that that's the number one story in the nation. You'll note that it is not the number one story on the Wells Report. The reason is because, one, Hunter Biden being indicted is definitely news, because the idea that the son has been involved with the father, who is President Joe Biden, in business dealings that brought millions upon millions of dollars into the Biden family, that is cause for it to be a national news story. But is it the biggest story? No. The reason that we decided to put this at the last of the Wells Report is simply because everyone's innocent until proven guilty. Hunter Biden inclusive, along with everybody else that has been indicted, and the mainstream media has run with these indictments as if they are all true and all real. They are not real. It is an indictment. Yes, it's news, but no, it is not a condemnation of guilt. And so we do things a little differently on this broadcast, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring you the news. We're not trying to exploit the news for political or even media effect. We're just trying to make sure that you know what's going on. To that end, Hunter Biden, the president's son, according to USA Today, was indicted on charges he failed to pay his income taxes. Justice Department Special Counsel David Weiss announced this yesterday. The announcement came months after a plea deal over gun and tax charges. After that deal collapsed, under the agreement, which a federal judge rejected, Hunter Biden was set to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of failing to pay taxes in 2017 and 2018 and the gun charge. Biden is charged in a California federal court with 3 felony tax offenses and 6 misdemeanors. He engaged in a scheme in which he failed to pay at least $1.4 million in self-assessed taxes from 2016 to 2019. And also evaded tax assessment for 2018, in which he filed false returns. We have a report. This was yesterday on CBS News with Norah O'Donnell, and perhaps the best television news journalist or journalist of any kind, Catherine Herridge, filed this report last night.
Nora, according to the 56-page court filing, a federal grand jury in California has returned a 9-count indictment charging Hunter Biden with 3 felony tax offenses and 6 misdemeanor tax charges. The sprawling indictment alleges the president's son engaged in a 4-year scheme to avoid paying on at least $1.4 million in federal taxes. He is also accused of taking false business deductions to reduce his tax liability. The indictment says he spent millions on an extravagant lifestyle, including drugs, escorts, luxury hotels, and exotic cars, rather than paying the IRS. The case was brought in California because Hunter Biden lived there when the alleged crimes were committed. The president's son is already facing 3 felony gun charges in Delaware for allegedly lying about his drug use to purchase a weapon in 2018. In a statement, Hunter Biden's lawyers said, quote, based on the facts and the law, if Hunter's name was anything other than Biden, the charges in Delaware and now California would not have been brought. If convicted, he could face up to 17 years in prison.
Yeah, and that was great defense on the part of a very good attorney, who was Abby Lowell. Except, unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily deal with the entire situation. The fact that Hunter Biden is named Biden and his father is the president of the United States all but guarantees that there will be these kinds of circumstances, especially as far as tax evasion is concerned. It's simple. If Hunter Biden was Hunter Johnson, he very likely would have been charged under similar circumstances, except you would have never heard about it. And I have to say one more time, we on the Wells Report do not convict in the media. We just don't. These are indictments. They're serious. They require a full explanation. They require a fair and equitable trial. And at that trial, we'll find out whether or not Hunter Biden is guilty or innocent of any of these things. And yes, that spills over onto Donald Trump, who is likewise indicted, but has been all but convicted. At least from the media standpoint, he has been convicted as being guilty. That is journalistic malpractice. It is simply not real. And so we're going to proceed as such. There are people that are talking about this, and they say very interesting things, specifically Harvard Law professor emeritus Alan Dershowitz. He also spoke about this, and he was on Hannity discussing this very thing. And when he said that you got to remember the judge who is responsible for all of this coming out is Judge Noreika. She made sure that this was not all covered up by a deal that made no sense. And that is essentially what he's talking about. Dershowitz is extremely well versed on all this. And indeed, this showed up on Fox News. Let me bring this to you as we continue with our broadcast this morning on the Wells Report.
Jared, along with Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz. Greg, we'll begin with you tonight. You've been following this story. You've been writing column after column. I want to go to the heart of this issue. I have been calling this the Joe Biden bribery and money laundering scandal allegations. Does this take us one step closer tonight to Joe Biden, the president, and his involvement and his lying to the country?
It does. His complicity, Sean. The evidence is mounting that Joe Biden, as you say, actively aided and abetted his son's schemes. He's been lying about it all along, and everybody knows that. He even lied about it yesterday. There's documents, testimony, White House logs, emails, text messages that prove that he talked by phone with Hunter's clients. He met personally with his son's overseas partners. He even attended their meetings that were closely guarded. Joe Biden appears to be complicit in pushing the Biden brand, which was selling access to him, promises of influence. Devon Archer confirmed that Joe sent signals and operated as leverage for all of that money, millions of it. So it's obvious that Hunter was selling his dad to the world and the family was getting rich from it. It doesn't matter whether Joe pocketed a single penny of it. Under the bribery statute, it's still a crime if the money goes to any other person or entity other than the public office holder. And of course, as you pointed out earlier, bribery is an impeachable offense. And by the way, there's no statute of limitations on impeachment, as there were in some of the charges that David Weiss allowed to lapse intentionally.
Professor Dershowitz, I doubt you would disagree with us on the issue of Joe Biden lying. It is now clear that he lied to the country when he said he never spoke to his son, brother, or anybody, for that matter, about their foreign business dealings. But it's bigger than that, because Hunter, in his own laptop, the very real laptop, not the fake laptop that the media claimed, but he implicates his father. Half his income, he complained, goes to Pops. He had to pay for Pops' home repairs. That is backed up by emails we learned this week with Joe Biden himself, directly with Eric Sherwin, who was the money person in the corporation. And then, of course, emails with Hunter and Eric Sherwin. Oh, what account should I pay Pops' home repair bill this time? Hunter complaining about paying the home repair bills for 11 years. And then, of course, Tony Bobulinski, the big guy, money set aside for this. None of this would be happening but for Joe Biden. But if you focus on one issue, Professor, this is what stands out in my mind. Hunter Biden said he had no experience in energy, oil, gas, coal, or Ukraine. Now, if you look at the Burisma example, he's paid millions. In that case, we know Joe Biden leveraged $1 billion. Then we have that WhatsApp message. This involves CEFC. That is the Chinese oil conglomerate. Again, no experience in energy. I'm sitting here with my father. We're wondering why you did not fulfill your commitment. Everybody, he will use everybody he knows and my ability to hold a grudge. You will regret not following through with what you agreed to. A few days later, $5 million shows up in one of those bank accounts, Professor, what James Comer is calling shell corporations. Tell me, Professor, what does that look like to you?
Well, first of all, let's remember who's responsible for all of this coming out. We have to give credit to Judge Noriega. Judge Noriega made sure that this was not all covered up by a deal that made no sense. I predicted on your show and other shows that Judge Noriega would not accept the deal. I was trashed for it by many academics, by CNN, by many other media. But she did the right thing. She sent it back, and the result has been now much more information coming out to the American public. As I've said before, I hope that this results in the appointment of a real special counsel outside the Justice Department looking at the President of the United States. Because if it becomes just an impeachment concern, then half the country won't believe it. Half the country will. The same thing happened with Trump. But if there's a special counsel who's credible and who can get to the bottom of this and either clear President Biden or accuse President Biden, I think the American public will
Professor, let me stop you here, though.
Yeah. So you heard what Alan Dershowitz said. I have to point out to my colleague, Sean Hannity, that he is indeed trying to convict. He is essentially prosecuting the case on his television broadcast. Sorry, that's not what we're supposed to do here. Alan Dershowitz very rightly points out that indeed there should be some kind of an investigation, and that investigation should occur immediately. And yes, it should have the teeth and weight of law. That has been set aside numerous times by the DOJ, specifically the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. Now, there's no way to hide from this. There's no way to hide from it now. There is a thing in civil court that talks about the preponderance of the evidence. Now, I'm not talking about trying to assign guilt. I'm talking about trying to assign a special prosecutor, something beyond the world of politics, something that actually looks at this for what it is or is not. Dershowitz points it out. There is, at this particular moment, just as much of an opportunity for President Biden to be completely cleared of all of these charges as there is that he can be actually credibly indicted because of these charges. To not actually go out and follow the evidence wherever it leads is intellectual bankruptcy on the part of the Department of Justice. Indeed, it turns it into the Department of Politics, not the DOJ, the DOP. But there's something else, and that something else is simple. The Biden family is aware of all of this. They have a much better perspective on everything, whether it absolves them or whether it convicts them. They know what's going on. It's time for them to come clear and clean. There is a famous story of President Clinton when he said, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. And then coming out and saying, yes, as a matter of fact, I did. It's time for that moment for President Biden. Is there an impeachment out there? Yeah. And the reason there's an impeachment out there is because bribery is specifically outlined in the Constitution of the United States as an impeachable offense, which is what Greg Jarrett, a friend of the Wells Report and who has appeared on this broadcast many times, he made that abundantly clear as an actual point of law. And so, is this existential for the presidency of Joe Biden? Yes. Yes, it is. But truth is the best disinfectant. Truth. Coming clean. Doing the things that are right. Let the American people know what is happening. Many people who are Trump devotees have also said, well, I'm going to vote for him regardless of what happens in these courts. That is because most Americans, even Democrats, most Democrats believe that this is a political witch hunt on the part of the DOJ and all of these other leftist government persecutors, not necessarily prosecutors, that this is all about politics. Well, in that particular case, it is. In this particular case, I see beyond that. I see that there is certainly evidence to the contrary. And as I've always said, evidence is not evidence until it's accepted in a court of law. A conviction is not a conviction in the media. It's only a conviction in a court of law. There were no problems whatsoever in a special prosecutor investigating Donald Trump over something that was proved to be a hoax. Part of me wishes and hopes that indeed a special prosecutor would find exactly that. But the evidence from the American banking system has to be explained. All that has to be explained. It has to be explained forthwith. I call on the Biden administration and the Biden family to stand up and start telling the truth immediately. This is the Wells Report.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
This is the Wells Report. Good morning. John David Wells at your service. Friday in progress. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. More about that coming up in just a little bit. Donald Trump is appealing a federal judge's ruling that he is not protected by presidential immunity from criminal charges tied to his alleged interference in the 2020 election. This being reported by USA Today. The former president filed the appeal yesterday along with a request for a pause in his criminal proceedings while the appeals court considers his arguments. Prosecutors oppose the pause request, said Trump. His trial in the case is currently scheduled to begin in March. Trump is fighting charges brought by special counsel Jack Smith that could land him in prison for decades, including that he conspired to obstruct the process for certifying the election. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan rejected a series of arguments from Trump to have the case dismissed, such as that he can't be prosecuted because his alleged actions were, quote, at the heart of his official responsibilities as president. Defendant's 4-year service as commander, and then this was from Judge Chutkan, and this is important. The defendant's 4-year service as commander-in-chief did not bestow on him the divine right of kings to evade the criminal accountability that governs his fellow citizens, unquote. One more time, quote, defendant's 4-year service as commander-in-chief did not bestow on him the divine right of kings to evade the criminal accountability that governs his fellow citizens, unquote. That is judicial bias. That statement has precluded any kind of a fair hearing of the evidence and trial in a trial that has yet to come up. This judge needs to step aside, which, by the way, would be an elegant solution to an intractable problem that Judge Chutkan faces. It's absolutely true. She has predisposed guilt on this defendant. And indeed, she should be recused, if not recuse herself from this trial. That statement proves it. Just exactly what does she mean that this particular service's commander-in-chief does not bestow on President Trump the divine right of kings to evade the criminal accountability that governs his fellow citizens? What does that mean? What is she talking about? She has decided that Donald Trump is guilty. She should recuse herself right now. Now, who else would pick up this case? Somebody that is in better command of their public communications, I would say. The judge could have said this: the defendant's 4-year service as commander-in-chief does not bestow on him the evasion of a criminal accountability that governs his fellow citizens. It's perfectly fine. But to say that it did not bestow on him the divine right of kings is prejudicial in this case. It's obvious. Now, I don't know whether President Trump is guilty or not guilty. That's what a trial is supposed to decide. But there is equal justice of the law in this nation. And she is an officer of that federal court that says so. This is not fair and equitable. This is not equitable prosecution or equitable law against President Trump. She needs to quit. Now, she's in a tough position. She is clearly a Democrat judge. She is not impartial. And that should be enough of a recusal, right? Enough of a circumstance to demand recusal right there. But let's assume that that's set aside for whatever reason. The simple case is that when it comes to equal law, then you got to stick with equal law. If indeed the president has certain privileges that make him unequal, and one could certainly make a good argument that that is the case, then that should be said so, but not in the divine right of kings clause in her statement. That's the way I feel about that. I hope you have a wonderful weekend this weekend. My weekend is not necessarily going to start out with something wonderful. It's going to start out with something saddening to me. Last week, someone who has been my military mentor for years, Command Sergeant Major Charles R. Turbeville, lost his fight against cancer and passed away. His beautiful military funeral will be tomorrow. I will travel to Copperas Cove in Texas to witness that event. There is no way for anyone to properly assess the influence that CSM Turbeville had on my military career. He was brilliant with me. He listened to what I had to say. He offered guidance to make me a better senior NCO in the Texas State Guard. And yes, I have to point out that nothing I say with regard to the Texas State Guard has anything to do with the Guard itself or the Texas Military Department. These are solely my opinions. But my opinion about this man is directed by the incredible gifts he gave me to make me a better senior NCO, to be able to take care of my troops in the way that they deserve, to be able to clearly elucidate and make happen the orders that are given to us. He made it possible for me to know all these things. I will honor him this weekend. When I heard of his death, I became emotional because of the gifts he gave me. This man was sincerely great. It is sad that he is gone. This nation and this state is not nearly the place it was because of the passing of Command Sergeant Major Charles Turbeville. See you Monday. God bless you.